This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
U.S. crude oil inventories fell last week as refinery processing surged and crude output reached their highest since the coronavirus pandemic decimated fuel consumption, Energy Information Administration data showed on Wednesday. Crude inventories fell by 6.1 million barrels in the week to August 18 to 433.5 million barrels, compared with analysts' expectations in a Reuters poll for a 2.8 million barrel drop. Refinery crude runs rose 30,000 barrels per day, BPD, last week to 16.78 million barrels per day, their highest since January 2020, even as refinery utilization rates ticked down 0.2 percentage point to 94.5% of total capacity.
Saudi Arabia will likely roll over a voluntary oil cut of 1 million barrels per day for a third consecutive month into October, 5 analysts said, amid uncertainty about supplies and as the kingdom targets drawing down global inventories further. OPEC Plus agreed a broad deal in early June to curtail supplies until the end of 2024. Saudi Arabia at the time announced the additional voluntary cut which brought its oil production to a multi-year low of 9 million barrels of oil per day. Earlier this month, Riyadh extended the voluntary cut into September, with the Energy Ministry saying that it could be extended and deepened.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Oil prices eased on Thursday amid disappointing economic data from key economies and as investors await a speech by U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell on Friday for clues on interest rates. Brent crude fell 19 cents, or 0.2%, to $83.02 a barrel by 0619 GMT, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude dropped 24 cents, or 0.3%, to $78.65 a barrel. Manufacturing data from a host of Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, surveys on Wednesday painted a grim picture of the health of economies across the globe, raising demand concerns, analysts said.
U.S. officials are drafting a proposal that would ease sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector, allowing more companies and countries to import its crude oil, if the South American nation moves toward a free and fair presidential election, according to 5 people with knowledge of the plans. Washington has been trying to encourage negotiations between President Nicolas Maduro and the political opposition over elections in Venezuela and other demands. Sanctions were imposed following Maduro's 2018 re-election, which many Western nations considered a sham. Easing sanctions has been a carrot held out in the past by the U.S., but which so far has resulted in very few authorizations, including one to Chevron Corp that has allowed the firm to expand operations in Venezuela and export its oil to the United States since November. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. U.S. officials are drafting a proposal that would ease sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector, allowing more companies and countries to import its crude oil, if the South American nation moves toward a free and fair presidential election, according to 5 people with knowledge of the plans. Washington has been trying to encourage negotiations between President Nicolas Maduro and the political opposition over elections in Venezuela and other demands. Sanctions were imposed following Maduro's 2018 re-election, which many Western nations considered a sham. Easing sanctions has been a carrot held out in the past by the U.S., but which so far has resulted in very few authorizations, including one to Chevron Corp that has allowed the firm to expand operations in Venezuela and export its oil to the United States since November.
Shanghai copper prices rose to a nearly 3-week high on Thursday, amid hopes of demand pickup fueled by policy support and peak consumption season coming up in top consumer China. The most traded September copper contract on the Shanghai Futures Exchange, SHFE, rose as much as 0.6% to 69,490 yuan, $9,553.99 per metric ton, its highest since August 4. China's Yangshan copper premium rose to $48 a ton, the highest since July 7, indicating rising demand for imported copper.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
India is expected to ban mills from exporting sugar in the next season beginning October, halting shipments for the first time in 7 years, as a lack of rain has cut cane yields, 3 government sources said. India's absence from the world market would be likely to increase benchmark prices in New York and London that are already trading around multi-year highs, triggering fears of further inflation on global food markets. Our primary focus is to fulfill local sugar requirements and produce ethanol from surplus sugarcane, said a government source who asked not to be named in line with official rules. For the upcoming season, we will not have enough sugar to allocate for export quotas. That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.